My life in Boise, Idaho, had always been simple, comforting, and predictable. I was Brenda Holloway, a woman of 55 years, and my days were centered around the quiet rhythm of our small community and, most importantly, the care of my sweet 87-year-old mother. She had become infirm, needing full-time attention, and I had moved back to the house where I grew up to provide it. This meant leaving my beautiful apartment in Manhattan, a piece of New York City that I had worked so hard for. That apartment was more than just bricks and mortar. It was my safety net, my future income, the financial backbone that allowed me to dedicate myself fully to my mother without worry. To make ends meet, I decided to rent out the Manhattan apartment, fully furnished. The rental income was essential, my main source of support now. I put out feelers, went through the usual processes, and then she appeared, Eleanor Vance, a middle-aged woman from Queensland, Australia. She seemed charming, sophisticated, and eager to secure the place. The only hiccup was her lack of previous landlord references, as she claimed to have owned and lived in her home for 30 years back in Australia. I understood that; it made sense. She provided solid employment verification, meeting all the financial criteria, and came with glowing personal letters of reference. My gut told me to be cautious, but my need for the income, coupled with her seemingly impeccable credentials, pushed me to trust her. I signed the lease, feeling a sense of relief that my financial situation was secure and I could focus entirely on my mother. Little did I know, this simple act of trust would shake my world to its very core. Eleanor Vance was about to become the biggest problem I had ever faced, threatening everything I had carefully built. 7 months into her one-year lease, the first warning signs appeared. The rent payment was late. Then, a week passed and another. My calls to Eleanor went straight to voicemail. My emails went unanswered. Registered letters I sent to the apartment were returned, undeliverable. It was like she had vanished into thin air, a ghost in my own apartment. Panic began to set in, a cold, hard knot in my stomach. The rental income was not just a luxury, it was vital. Each passing day without payment meant my careful plans for caring for my mother were unraveling. I felt a growing sense of dread, the betrayal like a bitter taste in my mouth. I had no choice but to take legal action. I initiated proceedings in housing court in New York City, a daunting task from Boise, Idaho. It meant countless phone calls, legal fees I hadn't budgeted for, and a constant juggling act between court dates and my mother's needs. The stress was immense, and I felt the weight of it pressing down on me. Eventually, after what felt like an eternity, I secured an eviction order. But Eleanor Vance wasn't one to go quietly or even show up. She skipped every single court date, ignoring every official notice. One day, a process server confirmed she had, under the cover of darkness, surreptitiously moved out of the apartment. When I finally arranged for someone to inspect the place, my heart sank. It was a disaster. The beautiful, furnished apartment I had left in her care was trashed. There were unidentifiable stains on my expensive sofas, the microwave was shattered, and the entire place was left in a filthy, uninhabitable condition. The damage was extensive, far beyond normal wear and tear. I tried to pursue her for damages and unpaid rent in small claims court, seeking to recover the thousands of dollars she owed me. But Eleanor, true to form, never appeared. It was then that I discovered her ultimate escape plan. She had fled the country, returning to Australia. The idea of pursuing her internationally was a non-starter. The cost of hiring an Australian lawyer, domesticating the financial judgments, and trying to garnish her wages from half a world away was astronomical, far more than I could ever hope to recover. I was out $16,000 in unpaid rent and another $7,000 in damages. My financial safety net was shredded. My savings, which were meant for my mother's long-term care, were dwindling fast, eaten up by legal fees, cleanup costs, and the months the apartment sat empty while I made repairs. I felt completely defeated, foolish for having trusted her, and utterly helpless. Eleanor Vance had not only stolen my money, but she had also stolen my peace of mind and my sense of justice. She had gotten away with it, and the thought that she would do this to another unsuspecting landlord burned within me, a deep, abiding anger that simmered beneath my quiet exterior. I had hit rock bottom, despair threatening to swallow me whole. I truly felt that all was lost, but something inside me snapped, a quiet resolve hardening my spirit. Eleanor Vance thought she had gotten away unscathed, but I was not one to let injustice stand. The anger, which had festered for so long, transformed into a cold, calculated determination. I might not be able to get my money back through the legal system, but I could certainly make sure she never did this to anyone else. And I would make sure she paid a price far greater than the money she stole from me. I started to research, spending late nights hunched over my computer in Boise, while my mother slept peacefully down the hall. I learned about domain names, about search engine optimization, about the power of the internet. It was a steep learning curve for someone who had always been content with a simple online presence, but I was driven by a purpose. I discovered that Alina Vance had a very unique name. Not many Alina Vances in the world, certainly not one from Queensland, Australia, who would fit her description. And that was my weapon. I bought the domain name alinavance.com. It felt like a small act of defiance, a digital stake in the ground. Then, I began to build a website. It was crude at first, a collection of pages I pieced together with tutorials and sheer willpower. I poured every detail of Alina's deceit onto those pages. I uploaded her smiling professional photo, which I had found from one of her old social media profiles. I posted official copies of the financial judgments I had won against her in New York City, clearly showing the $16,000 in unpaid rent and the $7,000 plus in damages. I included the shocking photos of the filth she had left in my apartment, the irreparable stains on my sofas, the smashed microwave. I even uploaded the notice from the marshal, proudly displayed on my apartment door, detailing her eviction. I meticulously listed the details of where she worked in Queensland and the bridge club she frequented, information I had painstakingly gathered. I was incredibly careful, making sure that every single word, every single image was a verifiable fact, something I could prove in any court of law. I wanted no accusations of slander, only the cold, hard truth. Then came the second, equally important phase, making sure my website was seen. I immersed myself in search engine optimization, learning how to make sure that when anyone, anywhere in the world, typed Alina Vance into a search engine, my website would be the very first result. I tweaked, I refined, I studied until finally my efforts paid off. Alina Vance.com proudly sat at the top of the search rankings. I sat back, a quiet sense of satisfaction settling over me, and watched the statistics. The numbers were mesmerizing. I saw visitors from Australia, from various cities in Queensland. And then, the emails started to trickle in. One was from a human resources professional in Brisbane, asking if the Alina Vance on the website was the same Alina Vance who had just applied for a senior position at their firm. Another email came from someone who had seen her at a professional conference in Melbourne, wanting to share her whereabouts, clearly disgusted by what they had read. I even contacted the people who had written those glowing letters of reference for Alina when she applied for my apartment. I shared the website with them, detailing her unscrupulous behavior. Their shock and apology were almost as satisfying as the website itself. It has now been 3 years since I created that website. 3 years, and it is still there, still the #1 result when you Google Alina Vance. I continue to pay the small fee to keep the domain name and the website active, and it is a price I happily pay. The satisfaction of knowing that Alina Vance has been publicly unmasked, that she can no longer swindle others without her past catching up to her, is a reward far greater than any money she could have ever paid me back. I might not have recovered the $20,000 she arrogantly and callously cost me, but she has paid a far steeper price. Every job she applies for, every apartment she tries to rent, every person she tries to date will now know the truth behind the mask she wears. She cannot escape her past. My life in Boise, Idaho, has returned to its quiet rhythm, but I am not the same Brenda Holloway. I am stronger, more resourceful, and I have found a profound sense of justice in an unexpected way. The apartment in New York City is now repaired and re-rented to a wonderful, reliable tenant, and my financial stability is restored. My mother is comfortable and loved. I often wonder what Alina Vance is doing now, how her life has been impacted. And then, one rainy afternoon, an email arrived. The sender was Alina Vance. My heart gave a little jolt. I opened it. It was a long, rambling message, filled with pleas and justifications. She claimed her life had been ruined, that she couldn't find work, that her family was ashamed, all because of my website. She begged me to take it down, to show mercy. I read every word, a small, knowing smile playing on my lips. Then, without a moment's hesitation, I pressed the delete key. The digital ghost I created would continue to haunt Alina Vance, a constant, unyielding reminder of her past actions. My unyielding silence was my final, most powerful word.